Workplace Climate Committee, and instead of choosing cakes and cookies for tea times, we have a much more serious business today, but one that is definitely necessary. We're very grateful to Adam Tabor of the OSU Police Department for coming to talk to us. He says it'll be an hour-long or so session with a bit of interaction involved, and it will involve PowerPoint slides. So I'll hand it straight over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I know I always like to kind of get to know my audience before I start. I did a quick look around the room, and I didn't recognize anyone from an arrest, so that's tell me if I'm mistaken. A mix of faculty and staff from the history department, right? Is that basically? Okay.
And graduate students.
I'm sorry?
And graduate students as well, mostly over here.
Graduate students from within the same department. Okay, good. Well, I should let you know I'm the history expert in my house, which isn't saying a whole lot, because all that means is I know the difference between the Civil War and the Revolutionary War. I'm the only parent in the building who knows the difference between the two, so I've got the label as the history expert. And you know, oddly enough, one of our police officers, one of our patrolmen who you see in uniform, and he works the evening shift, has a bachelor's degree in history. I'm not sure how or why he became a police officer, but he and I talk about history quite a bit. And he's one of the neatest guys in our department. So anyway, I'm pleased to be here. It's unfortunate that I need to be here. I wish we didn't need to have this discussion, but I'm certainly happy that I was invited, because it is important. And unless you've been living under a rock and avoiding social media and the news, you know this. You know that these kind of active shooter incidents seem to be happening, gosh, almost weekly, if not even more.
According to the newspaper last week, there have been, we're on the 344th day of the year, and there have been 351 mass shootings in the United States, so more than one per day.
That doesn't surprise me in the least. That's an interesting statistic. I'm glad you said that. And it's a shame. Unfortunately, and I think I heard President Obama say this a month ago or so, we don't even hear about all of them. You know, it's just unfortunate. The only ones we seem to hear about are the ones where at least 2 or 3 people are killed. And that's a shame that we've gotten to that point, but that also should serve as a reminder to us that we really do need to be prepared, because it just seems to keep growing, and it seems to be something that's happening more and more often. So I'm happy that I've been invited here to help you to plan ahead on how to survive one of these incidents. And that's the goal of my presentation today. You'll see me use the phrase active threat. More commonly, people refer to active shooter. We just kind of transitioned the word shooter to the word threat, because truthfully, it doesn't matter what kind of weapon they're using. If they've come to your workplace or anywhere with intent to kill people as opposed to committing other property crimes, then we call it an active threat incident. And what I'm going to do today, my presentation is kind of divided into a few different segments. The final segment is the most important, and that's how you can plan ahead on how to survive. I'm going to give you some pointers and some tips and the basic philosophy on what you can do to prepare. Before I get into that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about active threat incidents. Not too much. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of details, but I'll give you some information about the incidents, some of the incidents. I'll give you some information about how the university is working to either prevent or be prepared to handle incidents, and how you might be able to help. I'll tell you a little bit about our training, and then, like I say, we'll get into the bulk, most important part of the presentation, which is what you can do. A little bit of background. I am one of the police officers here on campus. I'm not in a uniformed patrol capacity any longer. I have an administrative role, but I'm still one of the sworn peace officers here on campus. There are about 50 of us, just a little under 50 of us. And we have a team that we call our active shooter training team. Oddly enough, we unfortunately feel the need to take active shooter preparedness quite seriously, and we have been for probably 8 to 10 years. We have a team of certified instructors who teach our officers how to respond to these incidents. And we practice it 2 to 3 times per year each one of our officers gets to do a dry run or a dress rehearsal of an active shooter incident. Again, 2 to 3 times per year, we set up an active shooter situation, and we have every one of our officers go through it with role players and fake blood and bullets that won't kill you, but they'll hurt you, and we play it out, dress rehearsal. So we've been doing that for 8 to 10 years, and we feel that our officers are well prepared. Our team actually gets to instruct some of the other agencies around Ohio and a little bit in Indiana and Pennsylvania as well. And I can tell you from being around in some different places, the officers that you have here on campus who will respond to an incident are among the best. They are well prepared and dedicated. 2 or 3 years ago, we kind of felt that we were missing a piece. It's great that our first responders are ready, but whose responsibility is it to survive from the moment the guy walks in the building until the cops get there? And the answer is, it's your responsibility. So we wanted to approach the staff and faculty and students and teach them how they can survive. And we've been doing that for a couple years. I understand we haven't been to this department, but thankfully we are now. So we're going to hopefully encourage you to believe that you can survive and teach you how you can plan ahead to do it. Hoping in the back of our mind that it never happens, but you know it could, right? So let's go with that. The first thing I like to tell people is, what does it mean, active threat? I've got a lengthy definition here that you may or may not be interested in. It's a definition that we use, but I can sum it up. You know, like I said a minute ago, if somebody comes into a place, an occupied place, and their intent is to kill people, we call that an active threat situation. And all of the philosophies I'm going to present to you today apply, whether the guy's using a gun or a pitchfork or a knife or an explosive device, it doesn't matter. A little bit of background about active threat incidents in the U.S. The data you're going to see on the next couple slides I got from the FBI report where they studied the incidents from 2000 to 2013. And you can see here, you know, obviously we're looking at a map of the U.S. with the incidents that they studied plotted across. And I guess if you're planning on moving, this would be a good place to go. But we got a guy from here, and I wouldn't recommend it. The idea here is really there's no safe zone. These things happen everywhere. You know, you don't want to say, well, they only happen in the big cities. That's just not true. If you're interested, and you don't need to copy this down, not that you would anyway, but if you're interested in getting a little more information about the incidents that the FBI studied, you can actually go to this map on the web. It's an interactive map. That's the address of it, but to find it easier, if you just do a Google search for that phrase, the FBI Active Shooter Interactive Map, you'll get a series of results on Google, and if you click on any one of them, it's going to take you to a page that looks like this. It's the same map, but it's interactive, and you can see what I've done here is I've isolated Ohio. And you can do that once you isolate Ohio or whatever state you're interested in learning about. Down at the bottom, you'll get some details about the incidents that are plotted there. And we can see, you probably already picked out that one of them appeared to be in Central Ohio, one of the dots, and it would be this one here. You can see that it says Ohio State University. Some people know, some people don't know that we had an active shooter in 2010 here on campus. But if you're interested in learning any more about it, you can go there. It's not the focus of my presentation today. Here's the same data plotted a little differently. The idea here is, like I said earlier, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably already know this, these incidents are on the rise. And if you haven't prepared yet, I would say now's the time. Now's as good a time as any. It doesn't look like this graph is going to start to decline anytime soon. So I think the threat is real. And although statistically you may not ever encounter an active shooter, those statistics are increasing. And you're going to find in my presentation today that it's pretty simple. It doesn't take a whole lot of time or effort to plan ahead to survive. And I hope that I'm able to motivate you to do that today. Don't expect you to be able to read this, but I'll tell you what you're looking at is I pulled a page out of that FBI report, and it's their page that covers resolutions. In other words, how did the incidents come to an end? Because, you know, they all do, right? There's never been, and never will be, an active shooter incident that goes on forever. They all come to an end. And although that seems kind of simple, it's important. because you're gonna survive. You don't have to survive for an hour. You don't have to survive for 30 minutes. Statistically, these things end in 5 minutes, so you only need to survive until they end. What we've done is we've studied what causes them to come to an end, and who survived to that end and how did they, and that's where we build our presentation. A few statistics for you to look at. You can see a little over half of these incidents come to an end at the shooter's choice. A lot of these shooters have come into the incident having planned ahead on how it's going to end. A lot of times they know how it's going to end. You can see almost a quarter of them, the assailant commits suicide prior to law enforcement getting there. A small percentage of them involve interaction of the citizens or the intended victims. Although we don't preach fighting back, it is one of our philosophies that we're going to talk about, and it may be something that you just have to do. And you can see a little over a quarter of them involved exchange of gunfire between the cops and the bad guy. Well, when we look at surviving these incidents, we have to keep in mind, I'm going to say it again because it's important, this incident is going to come to an end. If you're sheltering in place, or you're running, or you found yourself in a fight with the bad guy, understand that the end could be just seconds away. So use that as motivation to work hard for those seconds to try to make it to the end. You may remember, I guess it was a week before last, right? A week ago yesterday? Yeah. The incident at the Wexner Center, right? I can't give you too many details on this incident because it's still under investigation, but I can tell you that I'm intimately familiar with what happened. And I can tell you that my theory on this one is that the guy heard the sirens of the officers coming and he decided it was over. And I can also tell you that there were several people inside who survived because they employed the run, hide, fight philosophy, which we're going to talk about today. A little bit of more statistical data, and that'll be the end of that. But what I want to emphasize here is when we hear about these active shooter incidents, we always hear about how many people were killed or injured. Because we're hearing about it from the news, and people getting killed is what sells news, unfortunately. I wish it weren't the case, but unfortunately, a lot of your news stories, they want to sensationalize, and they want to tell you how many people are killed or injured. Like I mentioned earlier, if an active shooter incident occurs and no one dies, it doesn't even make the news. But I've read most of the after-action incidents of the major events, and I'm here to tell you that way more people survive these incidents than don't. The news, for whatever reason, doesn't tell you how many people survived. But I'm here to tell you that the number of people who survive is a much larger group than those who didn't. And you can put yourself in that survivor group if you just plan ahead on how to do it. And that's, I guess, the last line I've got to put it. You can definitely survive one of these incidents so long as you plan ahead, which I'm going to help you to get started on today. Any questions about the background on incidents? I'm going to shift gears a little bit and focus here on Ohio State now. So we live and work and play here at Ohio State University, the Ohio State University. And the question that goes through a lot of people's mind is, do I really need to worry about this? I mean, is it really something I need to spend time and effort on? Because, you know, we read about it happening elsewhere. Like, anybody recognize this picture? West Virginia Tech guy, right? Cho was his last name, right? And, you know, we hear about all these other places like Virginia Tech, and maybe you recognize that one. Maybe you recognize that one. That's the movie theater shooting that I think was a midnight release of a movie. Maybe you heard of that one. Just last month, there was an incident in California at one of the University of California branch campuses. I forget the date, but it was in November. We'll see the date here in just a second. But I pulled a quote from one of their students who was right there when it happened, and he survived. And he said this. You can tell he's a student because he said "and stuff," right?
points.
You see this and stuff, yeah. Yeah. But you know, he said you just don't ever expect it to happen here. And this quote was taken from him right after he just survived an active shooting. It happened to him. And you know, if you want to hide under that rock or hide your head in the sand, you can. But I hope you all understand that it can happen here. In fact, we had a guy last week at the Wexner Center who tried something. Now, we were very fortunate that none of the staff or faculty were injured or killed that day. But I hope that you're motivated to prepare for this. I'm not trying to scare you, but I am trying to motivate you. And I'd like you to plan ahead on how you can survive. And the focus of my presentation is going to be positive. You absolutely can survive. And I'm going to show you how to. A little bit of information about how OSU is prepared for one of these incidents. I told you a little bit about the police training. I'll show you some pictures here in a minute. But there's something else behind the scenes that I want everyone to know about. And that's because the most effective way of stopping people from dying in one of these incidents is to prevent the incident from happening in the first place. And we've got a lot of people here on campus who do exactly that. We have teams of employees who work to try to prevent these incidents. And you can help. There's a very short web address there that if you're able to copy it down, I would encourage you to. And this web address will take you to a university resource. And I'm going to show you what the resource looks like here in just a moment. But what this resource does is it gives you some help on how you can deal with folks whose behavior is a little alarming. Disruptive behavior or disturbing behavior. And I mean, unless this is your first day on campus, you understand that there are some disturbed individuals around here. And they're under stress, and they exhibit some behaviors that can be a little alarming. And what I'd like to remind everybody of is when you hear about one of these incidents, like the Virginia Tech incident, for example. Oh, the guy came in, his name was Cho, and he shot the place up. And then people started coming out of the woodwork saying, oh yeah, of course he did. Like last week he said he was going to, and 2 months ago he wrote this paper and turned it in. Everybody's standing around thinking, well, that would have been helpful information about a month ago. Well, this resource, and it looks like that's the first page of it. When you go to that web address, it's a PDF document. You can see what it's titled there. To help you dealing with these distressed individuals or disruptive behavior, it's got lots of things in it. It's got some pointers on what kinds of behavior to look for, like what kind of behavior should alert you, how you can deal with it on the spot if the person's in your office or in the hallway with you or classroom or wherever, what you can do to try to de-escalate and handle it at the moment. And then it's got some contact resources of who you can notify. Hey, I've got this student, or I've got this friend, or I've got this coworker, and their behavior is a little alarming to me. And then one of these teams I mentioned a couple minutes ago will kick into action. And they'll look into this behavior, and they'll dig a little deeper, and they'll try to see if this behavior is something that needs addressed. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. I used to have a picture up here of all the weapons we collected off of one of our students, but I took it down because I got a little heat from showing people that. But I can tell you this, I'm a firm believer that those teams have prevented some incidents from happening. All because a faculty member or a staff member or a student said something, said, hey, this is a little weird. And we look into it. And like I say, this resource gives you phone numbers and web addresses and email addresses. You can contact people. And we use the phrase, see something, say something. So we're just asking you, if you see some disturbing or alarming behavior, let us know. We'll check it out. Maybe we can prevent one of these incidents from happening in the first place, which is the best measure, right? You can actually go to, gosh, what is it here? It's Office of Academic Affairs, and they have this thing in it, and it's a hard folder kind of thing. They probably get some copies from them if it's something you want to have available for your staff. Office of Academic Affairs. Well, I'll tell you a little bit more about us being prepared, us being the police officers. Like I said, we train 2 to 3 scenarios per year. Here's some pictures that I'll just flip through kind of quickly. Here's pictures we've taken from the scenarios where we create an active shooter incident and we have our officers come in and solve it. And like I said, every officer goes through 2 to 3 of these dress rehearsals per year. And if they ever release the video from the Wexner Center, you'll see that when our guys responded, they acted like they knew what they were doing, because they do. Here's a picture I like to pause at, just because it shows some of our victims making it out alive, and you can see their empty hands in the air. That's always the best way to exit a building. Put your cell phone in your pocket, empty hands. Because you gotta understand, these officers are a little nervous too. They're coming in thinking that it might be their last day, and they've got a very difficult job ahead of them. So they're heightened. Empty hands is the best way. And you could also be a good witness for them too. He's on the first floor through those doors, or maybe even a brief description like it's a white guy with a red shirt or something. That would be helpful. Because when our guys come in, they're gonna be coming in hot, and they've only got one job to do, and that's find him. And until they do that, they're not gonna do anything else. So it's probably good for you to know that. Here's a few more pictures. I'll give you an idea how seriously our guys take that. This guy right here, that's one of our officers. His name's Steve. He actually happens to live in the house next to mine. We're buddies, and he's one of the most physically fit individuals you'll ever see. He does one-handed pull-ups for fun, and very fast, and never breathes hard. And this is one of our instructors who is supposed to be about 2 feet away from him, but he's not able to keep up, because Steve is chasing a bad guy. That's the bad guy right there, actually. Steve's chasing him down the hallway because that bad guy has been involved in killing some folks in this building. And Steve runs down there and goes around the corner and finds him and gets him. And when he finds him and gets him, the bad guy was able to kill one more person, and this guy survived. And then afterwards, we always debrief our officers. Okay, what happened? What did you do well? What did you not do well? What did you learn? And then we give them some pointers. That's how we debrief after all these scenarios. And Steve, in this particular one, he said, you know, I think if I'd have got up those steps a little quicker, I might have been able to save that one person that he got. So can we run this again? And that's kind of how serious they take it. And he said, get up the steps a little quicker. He didn't hit any of them. He did one leap up the steps. And I'm thinking, okay, you want to try it again? But that's the dedication that these guys have. And the idea here is we take this seriously and we're prepared. And now we're taking it to the next level, which I think is a more important level, and that's you. We want you to be prepared too. So that's what the bulk of this presentation is going to be about from here on out. So I'm going to ask you to come up with a plan, a survival plan. It's going to be simple. It's going to have 3 parts to it. You probably already know the parts. Very, very simple. And I'm going to ask you to strengthen that plan. And what I've listed here is kind of a hierarchy of things you can do to solidify your plan. Every plan has to start with you thinking about it, right? And you can strengthen that plan as you progress through these activities. I think we'll probably, unless you fall asleep on me, we'll accomplish this one today. We may accomplish this one as well. But you can continue on down there if you're able. The strongest plan is one that you've rehearsed. You've been through a dress rehearsal or a dry run. If you're able to do that, great. Now, coordinating a fake active shooter incident in this building and going a big old rehearsal, that's tough. That takes a lot of work and coordination. I don't expect you to be able to do that, but I'm going to give you a couple pointers on how you can take just 30 seconds to rehearse it once or twice a week. And I'll give you those pointers here in just a minute, so we'll strengthen that plan. So let's get into the plan. It's going to have 3 parts, right? There's a quiz. The next slide is a quiz. First question. What are the 3 parts? You've seen the video maybe. Run, hide, fight. See some people shaking their heads. So there was a video put out by the city of Houston titled Run, Hide, Fight. And then if you saw our video, which by the way had a really handsome police officer actor in there, did you notice that? You'll see that we use the same phrase, run, hide, fight. And although we use those words, because it's a catchphrase, they're easy to remember, understand that it's more of a philosophy than it is 3 words. Run doesn't mean you have to run. It just means you have to get out. But you're gonna have this three-part plan, and it is in that priority. What we found is the best way to survive is getting out. So that's why we name it first, run, get out. If that doesn't work, you might have to go to your second one, which is, we call it hide, but it's, you may have heard the phrase shelter in place, barricade, things like that. We'll get into it here in just a moment. And then if neither of those are working, you might have to fight, depending on how it played out, right? But we want you to remember that it's in that order of priority, run, hide, fight. If run wasn't an option and I had to go to hide, that doesn't mean that run is out the window. It doesn't mean that run is over with. Because I might be hiding and then all of a sudden I have a window of opportunity to get out. And I want to go back to run. Always keep run at the top. Run, hide, fight, okay? So we'll start with run. First question on the quiz, it's multiple choice. It's that simple. It really is. Get out. He can't hurt you if he's here and you're not here. So that's the first part of your plan, is just get out. We call it run. Get out. There's a trick, though. If you think for a minute that when bullets and blood are flying through the air, that your mind is going to work right, you're fooling yourself. Ask anyone, or maybe you have personal experience of combat veterans or anyone who's ever been in a gunfight, they'll tell you this. You lose a lot of your senses, your cognitive abilities shrink. Your mind doesn't quite work the way you would hope, unless you've practiced ahead of time, you've trained for it, you've rehearsed it. That will kick in. And so that's what I'm going to encourage you to do. Getting out seems simple. I get out of this building every day at 3 o'clock or whatever time it is you leave, 5 o'clock. I know how to get out. But if you're like most people, you've probably taken the same path in and out every single day. Even though there's probably another 5 or 6 ways to get out, you're intimately familiar with one of them, but you may not know the others. So I'm going to encourage you to practice the other routes. Walk them. Take a different path in and out each day. Rehearse those escape routes. As simple as walking in and walking out. You'll learn which doors lead to an exit and which ones don't. I did a quick little walk down here and turned right, found myself in the, I guess a small little vestibule there, and if I go left, I'm out. If I go straight, I'm in the stairwell, which there's no door to get out from there, so I either have to go up or down. I didn't try the basement door, but I don't know if it's locked or not. These are the kind of things I'd want to know ahead of time if I have to run because there's a guy back here trying to kill me. I know there's a couple rooms along that hallway where if I duck into one of them, I don't have a door, but I've got a window I might be able to get out of on the ground floor. These are the kind of things I'm asking you to learn ahead of time. When you have to run from the guy trying to kill you is not the time you want to figure out, wonder if this door leads to an exit, assuming there's no sign there. That's not the time to figure that out, right? So rehearse it. Keep something in mind while you're running too, because a lot of people will worry, well, the bad guy's, he's got a gun. I mean, if I run, he's going to shoot me. Some people will just not run for that reason. Let me tell you something. These bad guys, they miss. Absolutely they miss. They only hit about 10% of moving targets. I like my 90% odds. This guy here probably thought he had him tackled, but he missed. Bad guys miss. I'm going to show you a video illustrating just that here shortly. But keep that in mind. Not only do they miss, but even if they hit you, there's only a couple spots on your body that will turn your lights out. There's lots of spots on your body that you can survive. And you got to put your mind in that right spot if you're going to survive. That's what a big part of this is all about, setting your mind that you can do it. I'm telling you, you can. You're going to see a couple girls in a video here. You'd be amazed if they survive. I'll show you. But run, get out, plan ahead. Know your exit routes. It's as simple as walking them. It's something you can do once or twice a day, easily, right? Second part, priority B. You know, sometimes getting out isn't an option, and you might have to shelter in place, lock down, whatever you want to call it, hide. really it's a philosophy about just putting yourself in the right position so that the bad guy can't get in the position he wants to be in. He wants to be in a position to kill you. And they like stationary, easy targets. What we found in reading all these reports and reviewing incidents is if these bad guys experience some difficulty, they tend to move on. They don't like to have to work very hard for their victims. They want easy, bang, you're dead, bang, you're dead. If they come to a door that's locked, chances of them trying to break in are very slim. They're gonna move on. They come to a room that appears empty, you know, they look through, appears empty, they're gonna move on. That's what we've found. Now, of course, we can't predict every incident from here on out, but historically, that's what we've noticed. So you wanna put yourself in that position. Whether you're able to lock the door or not, maybe you have to barricade the door. I don't know if this door will lock or not, but if this were my office, I'd figure it out. Maybe I need a key. I don't have that key handy. Maybe it's just a matter, you know how some of those doors you just push the button on. Maybe that's all I need to do. Maybe I don't have the option of locking it, but it looks like I've got several things in here I can push in front of the door to give him some resistance so that when he looks and sees that there's a stack of tables, he might think, well, this is just a storage room. And you move on, try to find an easier victim. That's my radio, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's my radio, apologize. But you need to plan these things out for your space that you frequent. Can I lock the door? How do I turn the lights out? I mean, I got 4 switches over here and 4 over there. You know, sometimes I gotta hit 2 here and then go hit 2 there. Figure that out ahead of time, right? Some rooms you can't even lock, or you can't even turn the lights out because it's got a motion sensor. But maybe I can override that motion sensor. I need to figure out how to do that. Maybe I need to get my building coordinator in to help me figure that out. But I want to be able to quickly lock or barricade, lights out, cell phone silenced. I don't mean vibrate, I mean silenced. Be amazed if your phone's sitting on a table and it vibrates, how you can hear it out in the hallway. That's the kind of thing that might trigger the bad guy to come in. But plan ahead, learn all these things.
May I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
I understand your point about locking the doors, but one thing I've noticed is that classrooms at OSU don't seem to have locks.
Yeah.
And there must be some logic behind that, and I'm hoping it's not simply budgetary.
Yeah, I mean, it might have to do with ADA or egress rules or that sort of thing. I'm not familiar with all those rules, but that could be a part of it. Bottom line is, you know, first day of class, you figure it out. If this isn't one that'll lock, all right, can I move this table? How quickly and easily? I got a garbage can in the way. Maybe I'll put that garbage can over here instead, and I can quickly get that across there. If I have a classroom full of students, I'm going to start directing them, everybody grab a chair, grab a table, let's move them quickly up against this door, and those sort of things to plan ahead. If it doesn't lock, it doesn't lock, and I've got to do something, right? Now, you know, this one opens in, so even as simple as this little device that's designed to keep the door open, I can use it to keep the door closed, and I have one of those handy. How secure is it? Give it a try. Wedge it in there, go around, see how secure that is. Try to push it open, see if it works. They make these little devices that you can put on doors too. I don't remember what they're called. This little metal thing that you flip on there, guaranteed not to be able to open the door. A Google search for some sort of like an active shooter defense tool for doors, you'll probably find it.
Is that what, similar to that thing that realtors use?
No, I don't, if I understand what you're talking about, I don't think so. It's a little thing that kind of mounts to the bottom of the door, and it's got a little flip down thing that engages on the floor and keeps it from being able to move.
They usually market them as traveling,
Yeah.
when you're traveling to be able to close hotel room doors and
Like
stuff like
for
that. So
your hotel
if you
room.
Google search it as travel, it's very easy.
There you go.
What's it called?
I don't remember what it's called, but I know it's I think travel door stoppers should pull up what you're
Oh,
looking
yeah,
for,
yeah.
yeah.
So, you know, the biggest first step is just planning ahead for these kind of things, and you're already thinking about it, so that's a plus. Make sure you can just figure out ahead of time how quickly can you get those doors locked or those lights out. And again, if you can't lock them, how are you going to barricade? What we found is these shooters, if they experience resistance, they'll move on. We'll move on to your buddy's classroom down here who didn't come to this session. I don't know. There's something else you can do too, is pick out your cover and concealment. Concealment is a hiding place, so you can't see you. It comes to the window, and you're behind that pillar, which might not work because there's another door, but maybe you're behind the TV or the podium. That's concealment, hiding spot. Cover is something that'll block a bullet, like a thick, heavy wall or a door, bricks, that sort of stuff.
May I ask another question that I think is related to all of this? If we're expected to do any of these things, if we're in a classroom, we're the person in charge. So, I mean, I think I hope my instinct would be to tell everybody what to do and not just hide. But where do you, I mean, I'm not gonna go into a classroom and say, okay, guys, it's day one and we're gonna have an active shooter plan, because they'll think I'm insane.
Right.
I'm not so sure.
You don't think?
No, I'd do it.
I've done it with my students.
Really? So I guess the question is, at what point, I mean, these are all things about me, but what about my students?
Yes.
Am I directing them?
Excellent question. It's a complicated answer. Here's what I'll tell you. From my teaching point of view, what I'm going to tell you is you have one responsibility, and that's you. Now, I'm gonna move on to that. I can say that all I want, but you wouldn't have gone into education if you didn't care about people. Same thing with nurses and police officers and EMS. And we're sheepdogs. We want to help. We want to protect, and that instinct is going to kick in. So, having said that, what you want to do is employ the same philosophies, but now you are the leader. You are the team leader for a team that is going to run or hide or fight. So it might be as simple as you planning ahead before they get there. Okay, this is the room we're going to be in for the next several weeks, so let me think ahead. In this particular room, there's a little corner back there that might not be visible from either of the doors. It might be that we could quickly get there.
That's why we're here.
So you're going to want to think ahead about how you're going to lead this team, right? But you do want to understand a couple things also. Some people in your team aren't even going to hear what you're telling them. They're going to break down. They're going to start sobbing and collapse to the floor. It happens. You may have to grab them and drag them. You just have to be ready for that if you're going to be the team leader, right? So same philosophies, team leader, thinking and preparing ahead. What am I going to tell my people? How am I going to direct them? And then again, be prepared. You'll have some leaders in your group also that you can count on. You know, hey, you identify a leader. You know, as a teacher, it doesn't take long to figure out who your folks are. You pick that leader and say, hey, grab everybody and have them do this. Have them get all in that corner real quick. I'm going to get the lights and try to barricade the door or something like that.
My question as an instructor would be, what if I'm trying to lock the door and a student or student trying to run while I'm thinking that the best way to hide? Some of them think, no, they should run.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the instructor, theoretically you're in charge, but you may not be able to stop them because they're probably thinking, I'm trying to survive here. It's all for, it's a one for all, or
Every man.
thank you. And so you might not be able to stop them, but I guess that's an issue you're just going to have to try to work through. If your instinct is to barricade, then you just start barricading. Maybe you have to give them a couple seconds to run if that's what they want to do.
So, I guess this is just a more basic general question. All of these are kind of assuming that we know that there's a bad guy there, but my question is there any way of alerts being sent out? Because when I heard say about the active shooter thing, it was via text or via Twitter or via Yik Yak, and I guess I wouldn't feel comfortable as an instructor relying on the fact that a couple of my students are fooling around and see that something has happened on Twitter.
Right.
Or hear gunshots myself. Is there like alarms, or how would that work?
The alarm protocol would be per the building coordinator and the staff, the leadership staff that occupies the building. If you all want to have some sort of alarm protocol, that's up to you and whether you have the equipment to do it or not. That's an individual decision. Campus-wide, as much as you say, you know, I hate to rely on, you know, my kids getting something through Twitter or Yik Yak, it can actually be informative. And sometimes that is the way that you're going to learn. The Buckeye Alert system is going to send a text to anyone whose phone number is on file and did not opt out of the system. And they'll send text alerts if there is an immediate danger to the campus community. Now, you didn't receive a text alert last Sunday because that person never left the building and there was never an immediate threat to anyone except for those who already knew it was happening, right? But if this person we know that is a threat to other floors in the building, we will send out some sort of alert. Other than that, it really is your senses. You've heard gunshots, you've heard people screaming and yelling and that sort of thing. Unless you've got some complex warning system in place, but you know, even those can fail too. So it really is a matter of hearing what's going on most of the time. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be possible to have some kind of alarm bell system standardized throughout the campus so that, you know, there's just a given, like 3 rings means it's one of these situations and we should just, you know, either get the heck out or barricade ourselves in. It seems like, since we teach all our classes in different buildings and there's like 1 million buildings on campus, to know the rules of each one and the habits of each one doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Right.
Is it possible to coordinate that across the campus?
I don't know if it's possible here at Ohio State. I know some of the smaller campuses have something like that. Unfortunately, that's not my area of decision making, so I don't know. We do have an emergency management division within public safety, and if you just go on the Department of Public Safety website, you can find the emergency management section, and there's some contact information on there. If you wanted to make a suggestion, ask the question, you could. Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and it is impossible to know all the rules of the different buildings. I guess I was thinking more in terms of where your offices maybe are, that kind of thing. And what we've done, one thing we've done in the past too is, this takes some coordination, but we've done it before, is, you know, I can bring a uniformed officer into the building and we can fire off some blank rounds so that you can hear what they sound like in the building. It takes quite a bit of coordination because you can't go doing that without everybody knowing what's happening. You'd be amazed how the sound carries through the building, and I don't even know how many floors we have in this building, but
3.
so if someone's on the 3rd floor shooting, we probably hear it down here. Inside a building, those sounds really carry.
In terms of follow-up on Professor Beach's question about sort of instructor role, I have no military or security training whatsoever. So if I'm sort of coming up with a plan on day 1, at least mentally, is there someone I can talk to in OSU's police department to just double check? Am I this is super amateur hour stuff from my perspective, in terms of my ideas. I really have no idea what I'm doing. And since the stakes are high, I'd like to have a professional check me up on this. Is there someone I can talk to in the OSU?
The answer is yes and no. The yes part is, we have a position, a crime prevention position in the police division, and that's part of what that person does. The no part to that answer is, she retired, and we're in the process of replacing her. What I'm being told to the information to deliver is, in January, we should have a person in that role, the crime prevention officer. So all you would have to do is send an email or make a call to the police division and ask to be put in touch with the crime prevention officer. And that person could come into your space and be a little more specific with you. Whereas today, I'm just kind of giving you the overarching philosophies on the kinds of things to do. But yes, we can do that. You just have to wait till January until we get to the role, unfortunately. Yes?
Thanks for this information, but I have to admit, I'm much more concerned about somebody starting an incident in my classroom, one of my students starting an incident, than I am about some wacko running up and down the corridor, you know, testing locked doors. Are you going to talk about that situation later?
Well, although I'm not going to touch on that specific situation, we are going to get into the fight portion of it. Because if that happens, your options are now somewhat limited in terms of hiding, running, and that sort of thing. I'm also going to show you a video where an incident started right there, and I'm going to show you how these people survived. Some things to keep in mind are, just because a person starts to shoot in the room where you are, doesn't mean you're dead. You can still survive. If you're able to get to the door, you can get to the door. If you're able to duck behind some cover, that could cause you to survive. And we'll get into the fight portion here in just a minute, and we'll talk a little bit about improvising some weapons. And some, you can plan ahead a little bit on what kinds of weapons I would be able to improvise. And we will talk a little bit about it. And then certainly if, after we talk about that, if you have more questions, I'm happy to discuss it with you too. We've got quite a few questions. Is there anything before we move on just a little? One other thing you can do, remember we're on the second priority here in the run, hide, fight, right? One other thing you can do is as simple as you have a place that you frequent, whether it's classroom or office space, just go to the door and stand at the door and get the perspective of a person who walks into this room for the first time. So if a gunman were to come into this room, come right through this door, what would they see? You get their perspective, that'll help you to figure out where is my best cover or concealment, like that corner. I now know where I would need to be standing in that corner if I want to avoid a line of sight from a person here. And it's just a little simple thing, but you can plan ahead by going to the entrance to the, this is some office in the U.S. somewhere, and just stand there and get the perspective of a person who's entered. Because again, if they think the room's empty, what we've seen a lot of times is they move on. And you'll see in this video I show you here shortly too, that you gotta understand too, these bad guys, they're ramped up. Their emotions are flying. They'll make a lot of mistakes as well. I'll show you some in just a minute. Sometimes you can't run, sometimes you can't hide. You're stuck. You're face to face with the assailant. You have to be prepared mentally for a fight. But you have to understand a few things about the fight too. It's not a boxing match. There's no time. It may end in 10 seconds. What I can tell you is that that incident last Sunday, it didn't appear on video as if it were going to come to an end, and then all of a sudden, it was over. The guy decided it was over, and it was over as quickly as it started almost. So you got to keep that in mind. Because a lot of people aren't fighters. You know, most normal people aren't fighters. But you got to motivate yourself. Listen, this might only be a 10-second fight. It's certainly the fight of your life, but understand that it might only last 10 seconds before either I have an opportunity to get out, or he decides it's over, or the cops come in. A number of things that could end it. And some things that will be helpful for you in preparing for this fight. If there are a few of you there, attacking in numbers is helpful. Even if the guy's got a gun, it's hard to defeat 3 people. If there are a number of you and you're able to do that. Now understand that not everybody's going to join your fight. Say you decide you're going to fight, not everybody's going to help you. It'd be nice if they did, but if you're a bystander and someone else jumps in the fight, you should definitely consider helping out if you can, because attacking in numbers is one of the best ways. I hope I don't have to motivate you to give it everything you got, but I'm going to say it. Give it everything you've got. Coach Meyer says, I need you to go 3 to 4 seconds from point A to point B, full speed ahead. Which just means give it all you have. Full speed ahead for 3 or 4 seconds. That's what I need you to do. This number 4 appears to be good, and number 2, they both appear to be giving it their all. And another thing is, just because you've moved on to the fight part of your 3-part plan doesn't mean you're going to abandon the run or the hide. So if you're in this fight and all of a sudden you have the opportunity to get out, do it. Thinking ahead, I really want to get out of here if I can, but right now I have to spray this guy with a fire extinguisher. But that might give you the opportunity to get out. So keep that in the back of your mind always. I'm still trying to get out of here. Right now I have to fight, but I'm still hoping to get out of here. When you're planning ahead, you know the rules here on campus, you're not allowed to bring weapons, right? You're not allowed to bring a gun to work, unfortunately. But there are lots of things that you can use as an improvised weapon. One I mentioned just a minute ago is a fire extinguisher. there are fire extinguishers all around, and they would make very good weapons. Not only that you could strike with or throw, but simply pulling the pin and shooting the chemical or the powder or the water or whatever that particular fire extinguisher has in it. That is a good weapon. Chairs, shoes, staplers, anything you can get your hands on, but planning ahead is helpful. How heavy is this chair? Could I really pick it up and throw it? Well, maybe I'll just pick it up and see. Do I have a stapler nearby? Where is the nearest fire extinguisher that I need to get to? Am I able to pick this thing up and throw it? How about this thing? And just a little bit of planning ahead on that would be helpful. If you have a particular place that you're going to plan to hide, to get out of view, say you've stood at the door and you've decided that that corner is my best option, so that's going to be my go-to spot. Maybe you put something over there that could be improvised as a weapon, whether it's a trash can or a chair or whatever you choose. Or you're at a desk and you realize, well, if a person comes right in, I'm probably going to have to duck behind this desk. Maybe down in the bottom drawer or around the floor, there's something that you could use as an improvised weapon. These are things that you can do to plan ahead. Obviously, it's not a good scenario. It's not a good situation. We know that. But you're going to do every little thing you can to give you an advantage. I'm going to show you this video here in a minute. You'll think these girls are goners, but they survive. And I'll show you that this act really can work. It has worked. I wouldn't come telling you. I do want to inform you of one little thing. So all of the principles that I've given you today, to run, to hide, and to fight, it's a solid plan. It works for the kinds of attacks we've been seeing here in the United States. But I'll remind you that we're seeing some different kinds of attacks around the country, and some people are saying that this Islamic State group is trying to bring their fight to the U.S. So what I'm saying is just stay informed. If we transition into a whole nother phase of active threat incidents, we may have to change our principles and our philosophies on how we're going to survive. But as of right now, everything that we've learned from active shooter incidents in the U.S., the run, hide, fight is your best option for survival. It has worked thousands of times. It worked last Sunday here on campus. I saw it. It can work. It does work. So that's where I want you to go for now. But stay informed in case things start changing. The last thing I want to show you before I give the opportunity for more discussion or questions, I got a number of videos here. I really just want to show you one of them, but I'll tell you about some of the others in case you want to look them up. The video that got it all started is titled Run, Hide, Fight. And if you do a Google or a YouTube search, you'll find it. Run, Hide, Fight is the name of the video. It comes up pretty easily, and that's the city of Houston. If you've seen our video, you heard us say Run, Hide, Fight. We actually had to get permission from the city of Houston to use that phrase. There are others. There's one that's specific to college campuses, and it's if you search for shots fired on campus. It's about a 20-minute video that's specific to college campuses. Some of these get into a little more detail on the Run, Hide, Fight. If you want one that's a real Hollywood production, well done, look up Los Angeles County Sheriff Department active shooter video. It's a fairly new one, Hollywood production. They're in LA, I guess, so they can do that. The one I want to show you is this one here in the upper left-hand corner, and I'll escape out of this, and I've already started it here. A little bit of a warning before we see it. We're only going to spend a few minutes looking at this, but this is not a production. This is closed-circuit television camera views of an actual active shooter incident. We are not going to see anyone die. We are not going to see anyone get hurt too bad. We are going to see people survive. So I'll tell you that. But if it's the kind of thing you just don't want to see, I certainly would understand if you chose not to watch it. Again, we're not going to see blood and gore. We're not going to see anyone die. We're going to see people survive. We are, though, going to see a real active shooter come in and pull the trigger. All right? So I would certainly understand, like I say, if you didn't want to do it. And And I'll pause it and give you time to escape if you don't want to see it. I'm gonna let it play here, and I'll pause and set it up for you. We're in a courthouse up on the second floor. That's our bad guy. I can tell you what the weather was like that day. It wasn't appropriate for a long coat like that. Another thing I'm seeing here is this is his motorcycle helmet. He left it sit there and just kind of abandon it. Well, the guy comes in not dressed for the weather, abandons his motorcycle helmet, something's up. He actually walked around a little bit like he was confused. And I guess that's not totally out of the scope of reality for a courthouse, because it might have been his first time there, and some people are a little confused on where to go. But abandoning his helmet, inappropriate dress for the weather, something's up. If I were to see this guy, I think I would say, something's going on here, something's a little out of place. Be aware of your surroundings. I'm gonna press play, and we're actually gonna back up in time just a little bit, and we'll see him coming up this set of steps from a different camera angle. You'll see that he has his helmet in his hand as he comes up the steps, and you'll also see that there's an employee walking up the steps ahead of him. So here he comes following her. And he hasn't really done anything to alarm anybody up to that point, but he doesn't exactly know where to go. You see he sets his helmet where we saw it before in the other view. And he's trying to figure out where he wants to go. I'm going to pause it right here. So this is the main action. We're going to see. I want to set this up for you. We are looking at the outer office in a 3-office suite. So this is the outer office. This is the inner office. And if you were to walk through here and go left, there's a third office. There's only one door to the entire suite. And that door is down here where it says Cam 8. In fact, this is the little hydraulic hinge. So the door's right there. So you can see this lady's working the outer office. There's a lady working the inner second office as well. And while she's crushing the candy on her screen there, she also has the view in the hallway right outside this office. So she can see the camera view outside this door. Now, I don't know whether maybe this is one of those I can buzz you in kind of situations, but I will tell you this door is unlocked and he's going to walk right in. So maybe the buzzer was deactivated, or maybe it's not one of those situations. But she can see the hallway outside. And she's going to soon realize that there's a man out there with a gun. Because that fellow we saw before, he takes the gun out and he finds this office where he wants to go. You can see that she's now recognized that. So at this point, she knows that the only door to this office is a man with a gun. So she's got to consider her options right now. They're not many, right? Run, hide, fight. She's kind of going to do a little bit of a combination of the two. She's going to do a little bit of running to get away. She's going to do a little bit of hiding to get around the corner so that she's not in that outer office anymore. When she goes around there, she also communicates with the other worker to let her know that something's up, and you'll see her react here shortly. But about that time, it's too late, and he comes in. So there he is. And he's come in, and he's got an assault rifle, and his intention is to kill people. So if I didn't know how this plays out, I would think these girls are a goner, because that's the only exit, other than jumping out the window, which I'll tell you they don't do. And I don't know how far he is from that woman, but it can't be too far, maybe 25 feet or so, I don't know. He's got an assault rifle, and you're going to see that he's going to try to get her. So he starts firing at her, but he misses. And let me tell you, these guys miss. So just because you are in that situation doesn't mean you're a goner. You still need to have the mindset that you can survive. Did you notice what she did? Really her only option about that point, right? Duck. She ducked down. Now, I don't know whether she planned ahead and she's got maybe some kind of an improvised weapon down there or not. It's something she could have done, but really her only option was to duck, which is a form of hide. The other girl, you know where she is, right? Back around there to the right, which is just a small section of the office. There's no escape over there. He's going to go in, and he starts heading back to, pause this again. He starts heading back to that third office. Now, think about these two ladies. You got one of them that just took cover behind her desk. You got the other one that's around the corner. If you're the first lady and you ran back in there to escape, and then so you kind of ran, but you're kind of hiding now, and he goes into that third office, what's your best option? At this point?
Come back on.
Get out. Thinking ahead, if I have the opportunity to get out, that's what I'm gonna do.
He must be familiar with this suite of offices.
I think he was looking for the judge in that back office. Not only was he kind of familiar, but he's whether or not they weren't his intended victims, he shot at her. And you'll see what he does here in just a minute, because he's gonna come back through, but let's just for a second focus on that first girl. She does exactly what she needed to do, and she got out. Now, while she was getting out, I don't know if you noticed, but this lady stuck her head up. She was trying to see if that opportunity was available for her, but she soon realized it wasn't, because he's coming back out of that third office again. So now, you're thinking, this girl's safe, as long as she's completely out of the building. I mean, I'd run as far as I can, down the street, a couple miles if I'm able. So she's safe. But this girl, now we're thinking she's probably done, because he already tried to kill her once, he missed her, she ducked, he'll probably finish her off here, right? He walks right past her. If you're familiar at all with guns, did you notice anything with him and that gun? He's having a problem with it. He's got a malfunction. His machine malfunctioned. Now, if you're a gun person, you're not afraid of guns, you understand them, you know that they are machines and they do malfunction. But most people aren't gun people. Most people don't truly understand guns, and they are mystified by the gun. But I'm here to tell you, they're not exceptionally accurate if the shooter is highly stressed. They malfunction if the shooter is highly stressed. And we saw both of those right here. The guy missed from 25 feet, and now he's got a problem. You know, if you don't understand guns, maybe I could give you this analogy. If I gave you a stapler and a box of staples and 2 piles of paper, what are the chances you could get through and staple every one of those papers without a malfunction in that stapler? Most people say not a chance. Well, guns are similar. They malfunction, especially if the shooter is highly stressed. They malfunction. That's exactly what happened here. So she survived. You would have thought she was a goner, but she survived. She did a little bit of run hide, and she got lucky, of course, too. And I'll show you one more thing as he leaves. There's one more thing I want to point out. There's one guy I'm going to have you look at here in just a second. Fast forward, incident's over. Gunman's outside, he's already been eliminated. The incident is over. Officers are coming in the building. Here's 3 employees walking out. In fact, the girl in the middle is that girl that was in the second office who ducked and survived. That's her. What I want you to look at just for a couple seconds here is this fella. I want you to watch what he does. You would think he's injured or something. He's not. He's fine. Remember a little bit earlier in the presentation, I told you if you think your mind will work right when you're under this kind of stress, you're kidding yourself? That guy right there, he just kind of shut down for a second, and it happens. So I would encourage you to plan ahead for these kind of things so that maybe that kind of thing doesn't happen to you. Right? So I guess what I'm asking you to do is think ahead on how you would get out, and how you might barricade in place, and what you might use as an improvised weapon if you need to. Understanding that this isn't the complete answer to every active shooter incident, for sure. And if you want some additional answers, you have additional questions, we'd be more than happy to help. Like I say, in January, we'll have someone in our crime prevention role who can be a little more specific with you. But that's the end of my presentation. I understand you all probably have some work to do or get home maybe, but I'm willing to stay here if some of you have questions or have additional discussion that you'd like to do. But thank you again so much for having me come in.
Thank you very much.
My husband worked at a state agency for many years, and he told me that if they were told in that situation, they were supposed to call the agency's police. If we're in that situation and we can get to a cell phone, should we call 911 or the university police?
Great question. Thank you for asking that. So, the officers who can get here the quickest are the university police. But Columbus Police will also respond. If you notified them both at the same time, the university police will probably get here quicker because we're right here. If you call from a landline, 911, it's going to go to the university police. If you call from your cell phone, there's a good chance it's going to go to the city of Columbus. Now, this is exactly what happened last Sunday at the Wexner Center. So a cell phone 911 call went to the city of Columbus. So they were the first ones to know, and they were the first ones there. They're going to send their officers also. In a situation like this, you call 911 any way you can, and whoever answers the phone, the first thing you probably want to tell them is, I'm on OSU campus. You might tell them the building if you can, and you might tell them we have an active shooter. Just a few simple words to get the ball rolling, because then they're going to send the cavalry, right? Then you can go into more details if you're able, right? But understanding that you may get one of the two, depending on whether you use a landline or your cell phone. So that's why it's kind of important to say, I'm on OSU campus. There's an active shooter in such and such building.
Thank you.
And I also wouldn't recommend hanging up unless they ask you to. You can keep the line open if you're able to safely. I'd recommend doing that as well. Now, on my cell phone, my kids taught me this trick where I hold down the button and I say, call the police. It automatically dials 292-2121. If you want to write that number down, you can. It's 292-2121. That rings to the same room that a 911 call will ring to. It's the same people will answer that phone that would answer your 911 call. The only difference is if they have that call coming in and a 911 call coming in at the same time, they're going to pick up 911 first, but it's the same folks if you need university police.
And is that 614?
Yes, sorry, yes, 614, and if you're on a landline, it's just 22121. But again, I'm on OSU campus. It's probably a good thing to start with.
Can you give that number one more time?
292-2121.
And what button do you hold down?
Well, I have the iPhone, and my kids had me enter the number in my phone book, and I named it The Police. And then I put it as one of my favorites. And then all I do, I mean, I don't want to call them right now, but all I do is I hold down that button that gives me Siri, and I just say, call the police. And it's worked. I've done it. Every time I've tried to call over there, I've always done it this way just to make sure it works, and it does. Kids these days, they're checking out, oh, I just heard it.
It's me.
But again, to answer your question, regardless of whether you get the city of Columbus or campus, somebody's coming as long as you give them those details, yeah. Now, the benefit to the campus officers, we get here a little quicker, but we also know the buildings because we walk them. The city officers, just as good as us in terms of preparation, but they don't know the building as well. Anything else? Again, I understand if you need to leave, you want to leave, you won't offend me, but I'll stick around just in case there's more questions and discussion. Yes.
Just following up on Chris's question about shooter in the actual room and thinking about how even preparing students for the possibility of this might be counterproductive if one of your students turns out to be one of these people, I suppose, because they will then know what you're going to do.
Teaching the bad guys
Yeah,
your
exactly.
tricks.
I mean, that's obviously a very remote possibility, but I suppose it is a possibility. And I was just wondering if having some kind of smoke device in all of these classrooms, you know, where, I mean, clearly if they can't see anything, even if they're right there amongst you with 60 students or whatever, so it's, you know, just impossible for everyone to hide.
And then the fire
If there was some
department
kind of
would tell.
smoke device in there, something that could just blind, I mean, even if it blinds everyone, as long as it blinds the shooter, then you're all right. I mean, is that something that anyone would ever consider?
If, I think so. If I were teaching here on campus, I would have a fire extinguisher in my room. Now, whether there was already one supplied, and I don't see one in here,
We
but I
don't
bet
care.
there's one in the hallway. and I bet I
I
could
hope they
easily
freeze them.
put it right here. I'm gonna have it in the room while I'm teaching it, because that is the kind of device you're talking about. Pull that trigger, pull that pin and pull the trigger, and I've got a smoke device, is what I have, plus a striking object, plus a throwing. And if I can distract that shooter just long enough, maybe folks can get out. Yeah. Now, is he gonna get some people? Quite possibly. We all know that, unfortunately. But it's a matter at that point of doing the best you can. Yeah. Something else to consider too is college students these days, a lot of our students have
Guns.
not only military experience, but combat military experience.
Yeah.
So you may have some folks in your class who've got quite a bit of skill in that regard. Now, hopefully they're not the one who's decided to do it. You know, that's another thing just to consider.
But things can snowball in unpredictable ways. I mean, I had an incident this fall that, you know, turned into nothing, but with respect to that particular culprit. But I learned afterwards that another student in the classroom carries a knife, and he was trying to figure out when to use it.
When the incident was developing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's scary to think about, and unfortunately, I believe more of that stuff happens than we're ever aware of, you know, but, and, you know, I think that's probably why it's important to have a little bit of planning ahead in terms of getting out. And if you check out that resource that I mentioned, the dealing with disruptive individuals.
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah, and, you know, there's some pointers in there.
Just by
too.
sheer coincidence. I picked it up in the department office about a week prior.
It could come in handy. You know, if anything, you de-escalate the incident at hand as best you can. And, I mean, even if it were to, okay, we're gonna end class early today, and let's all just get out of this environment right now, and then you contact the right folks in the university who can step in and investigate. Yeah, there's a lot of that, you know. Just as we have a lot of folks with military experience, we also have a lot of folks that are under a lot of stress, and some of them are on the edge. We just have to realize.
And I don't think that this guy, one student carrying a knife, is atypical. I spoke to a professor at Wright State 2 or 3 years ago, and she told me about students in her class showing her their guns.
Oh, God.
And guns are banned on that campus as well as this one.
Yeah, you know, I don't.
Although that
doubt-
may change with the bill that's in the legislature right now.
Yeah.
Colorado may come to Ohio.
And I don't doubt for a minute that we probably have students with guns today. I mean, they can conceal them. You'd never notice it, especially if they're military experienced or they have a concealed carry permit, yeah. But you know, that's, in my opinion, that's also all the more reason for the run part of my plan, because if the bad guy and then this hero student are gonna get into it, I'm hoping I can make it out that door in time.
Right.
I have a related question to some of the past ones there. Does the ban on weaponry on campus include so-called less than lethal options like pepper spray, tasers, that sort of thing?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. But I know where you could get that answer. You want to contact your HR, whether you have a department HR person or whether you have to go directly to university HR over there on High Street, but they would have the answer. What are the staff rules on weapons? Does it cover pepper spray, knife, taser?
I was actually more concerned with, not concerned about myself, but with the students, particularly female students, are they allowed to carry pepper spray with them?
Yeah.
Because I know
Does
a lot of
anyone
women.
else know
I
the
did
answer?
for years, because I had it on my key chain for walking my dog, until I got stopped too many times going through security, I took it off, and so I just got rid of it. No one ever said anything about pepper spray on campus.
Okay, and like I
No
say,
one
I
would
don't.
tell me not to carry pepper spray in the parking garage, sorry, this is not gonna happen.
I agree with you. You know, in a couple of years, my daughter will be going to school here.
That's also another potential resource in a classroom.
Absolutely.
Probably a good chance that some of them.
And of course, I can't advise you to break the university rules if it is a rule, I know, but I also get what you're saying.
I don't care.
Sorry, but, yeah, I get it, I understand completely, trust me, yeah, yes, sir.
In terms of the presentation, I'm not sure if it's been the full hour yet, but obviously, or most probably, we wouldn't be able to invite the police department representatives to the class that we're teaching. But in terms of sort of resources to have students on the same page, if we wanted to talk about this, or add links to a current site, or something like that, are there specific resources on the OSU Police Department site that you would recommend that we share to students as sort of a very brief preface?
In terms of, like a general safety type thing, or even maybe even as far as active threat?
Yeah, something like a compressed version of.
Let me show you, let me show you something that I have. I'll show you a couple things. It's a great question. Okay. Let me get to my resource folder here. So a couple things I'll show you. Number one is, there's this little pamphlet or booklet that's available. And no one's looked at it yet?
You want files from your computer?
So here is a resource that's available through the Department of Homeland Security. If you just do a quick Google search for DHS or Department of Homeland Security active shooter, you'll come to a resource page. And this is a little book that I'll flip through it. It gives you some guides on some tips. I know you probably can't read it all here, but it's basically some quick tips on this kind of stuff. Indicators of potential violence, preparing for and managing an active shooter, how to respond and stuff like that. So it's a little, gosh, what is that, 10-page booklet. There's also another one that if you do that Google search, you'll find this pocket card, which is also similar. This might be more of what you're asking about. But again, if you search Department of Homeland Security active shooter resources, this is just a 2-page card here. And you can see it's got the run, hide, fight philosophy behind it. There's also a course, if I can find it here. If you search FEMA active shooter training, this is an online course that you can take through FEMA, and they say it takes about an hour. You can see the link over here for interactive course. Say it takes about an hour, they even give you a certificate when you pass. But it's just a self-guided training to get you thinking and get you more of the stuff I discussed with you today, plus some additional. So it's another option too, I guess.
I hope this is relevant enough. I guess my question is less about active threat than sort of inactive or potential threat. Specifically, at the end of October, there was a threat that was posted, and we all got an email saying that the campus was open, but faculty were to exercise discretion. And I guess I'm kind of wondering what the procedure is for that, because like, you know, I'm a grad student. I have absolutely no idea whether or not how to make a judgment about when to cancel my class. Yeah, or what to say to, you know, or whether or not, you know, what to do with my students. So I was just wondering if you could kind of walk us through how those decisions are made when it's not, say, an active threat, and what we should know as far as making decisions like that for our own classes.
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of kind of behind the scenes information on that kind of thing. One thing that when you hear these kinds of alerts or get these emails and you read them, keep in mind that the university is going to do everything they can to keep from inducing panic. So they're not going to say run for your lives. Nobody come to campus today. But if they feel that the threat is real enough, they will advise that offices are closed. So like you mentioned, the email said offices are still open, classes are still conducted, but instructors can use discretion, right? So if they say that offices are open, then that means that the threat, although it's there and they're doing everything they can to investigate it and take precautions, they don't feel that it's large enough that we need to shut it down. Like, we really think this is gonna happen. So that maybe could put your mind at ease a little bit. If the offices are still open, whoever makes the decision is deciding the level of the threat. Now, they're gonna add that second piece in. The instructors can use discretion. In my experience, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the university or the police division, is that this is a business. Students are our customers, and students are of such an age that their parents are also involved for the most part. And parents, by nature, are concerned for the well-being of their children, right? So we have to take all that into consideration when a parent calls and says, you're telling me there's a threat of violence and you're gonna make my child go to class? We have to take that into consideration, and we have to say, and we're not gonna fight that battle and say, yeah, we are. Yeah, get your butt to class. We're just not gonna do that. So that's where we have to kick in. We're gonna allow the instructors to cancel if they want to, and your child will not be penalized, because we are understanding the parental side of it. And that's kind of where those messages are coming from. If you get a message that says campus is closed, don't come to campus, don't come to campus. Yeah, because that would be your indication that it's kind of serious. Now, having said all that, I will say that I don't know of a single active shooter incident that was preceded by a threat like that, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I wish they all were preceded by threats, then we can just shut her down when we get a threat. And then the other thing to consider too is terrorism. We've got this balance of giving in to terrorist threats versus not giving in to their threats. And that if the terrorists are going to understand that every time they make a threat, we shut down our operations, well, that's what they're going to do, because that's what they want. So, and I know that's not a cut and dry answer, but I hope it gives you a little bit more information into it. Yeah.
You can discuss that with the chair. That's what I did. I got 2 emails from students saying their parents forbade them to go to class. I heard about this threat just an hour or 2 before my class was supposed to go, and I read the note about discretion, and I thought, yeah. So I went and talked to Nate, and as I recall, he said one other person had already discussed it with him, and in the end, I decided, what probably everybody decided, go to class and see what the students want to do. And people want to stay, so they stay. But then I had this other incident the following week.
And well, shoot, just lost my train of thought. Sorry. Well, maybe it'll come back to me. Sorry.
Can you say a little bit more about, I mean, so de-escalating in a classroom situation, and maybe Chris, you want to talk about your experience, but I think all of these are very useful things to know and very helpful, but I think what maybe we're all the most worried about is someone who's upset about a grade, who's had a bad day, who's that somehow we are at the center or near the center of something like that. And so, I mean, presumably we don't have a fire extinguisher there. What, that sounded like that was the first choice, but what are the kinds of things you would recommend saying or doing in that situation?
Yeah, using your verbal judo is the best way to get out of that situation, de-escalating, like you said. Now, I gotta tell you, this is outside of my area of expertise. Mine is the active incident threat shooter, but we can provide some dealing with disruptive individuals training. And that would go through Lieutenant Rayner, R-A-Y-N-E-R, and his email address, I want to say it's Rayner.5. Let me just start an email and see if it comes up here. RAYNER.5@osu.edu, and he is the, he's in charge of our investigations section, and our crime prevention officer, who will come on board in January, that will fall under their area. So again, you might have to wait till January, but dealing with disruptive individuals is an opportunity for you to have someone come out and talk about.
Would it be possible to get your email address?
Absolutely. TABOR.4.
Thank you.
TABOR.4. Yeah. And again, my area is kind of the tactical thing and the active incident managing it right now, but we do have folks who can help you with that. Yeah. And it's all about, if you've ever heard of verbal judo, which is using the words to de-escalate, which is a great skill to have. Thank you.
Could you just give us a quick example of a couple of de-escalation words?
Well, in terms of keywords, I don't have any specific keywords, but one kind of overarching philosophy of that verbal judo is if you can somehow make a connection between whatever this person's problem is and the words that come out of your mouth, that kind of makes him want to say, you know how you're talking to someone and they say something that kind of connects to what you're all about right now? You just kind of go, If you can somehow connect to what their issue is, making them feel like you're hearing them, you're understanding them, and you're not basically saying, get out of here, you know what you're talking about.
Like, I'll give you an A, it's okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, you can have 24-hour extension, okay, just 24 hours.
I'll grant your extension in perpetuity to all your descendants.
And yeah, I don't know if we'll go that far, but just an example is if you can put their mind into a point where they feel like you actually hear them, because sometimes that's really all we're looking for is somebody kind of understand where I'm coming from. Now, you might be blowing smoke in their direction just long enough for you to end it now so that you can notify someone and say, hey, this student, this, yeah. And you know, if you think it's bad enough that the police need to be involved right away, then call the police, call the 2121 and ask to speak with the on-duty supervisor, whether it's evening, night, middle of the night, doesn't matter. And you can say, here's the situation, I'm concerned about this. And sometimes if we have resources available, we can put an officer in the building, you know, during the class if it's that severe. That doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it does. And you might be going through your department chair and the teams that I mentioned earlier that get involved, we call them our CAT teams. CAT is a crisis assessment team. There's one that handles staff and faculty, and there's another one specifically for students. But the staff and faculty one would go through the consultation and something services. It's a staff resource. If you go to the HR website, it's something in consultation services. And then the student one would go through the Office of Student Life, which has a few different branches. There's student wellness and that sort of stuff. But these folks will get involved.
I think we're out of time.
I'm sorry.